the 3-step solution something, problem solving approach. Right. Which are just wrong, right? So you want to be a leader in learning and development, but you don't have the team reporting into you, you don't have the big title, and you don't have any decision-making authority. Sound familiar? Well, I'm here to tell you that leadership is not about a title. It is about influence. And influence is something you can build no matter your position. And think about it. Some of the most influential people in your organization are not executives. They are the ones that people turn to for guidance, the ones that people follow. And in learning and development, influence is one of our greatest powers because we don't always have the authority. We don't always have the power to make decisions, but we definitely have the power to shape them. So in this episode, we're breaking down exactly how to lead without authority. We'll uncover why influence matters, the psychology behind getting people to buy into your ideas, and practical strategies to position yourself as someone with a voice that needs to be heard. So by the end of this, you will know exactly how to step up, shift conversations, and get people on board, even if you're not the one making the final call. So part 1, why does influence matter in learning and development? And this is starting with the obvious, but why does influence matter so much? Why don't we just wait for a leadership title? And the reason is simple. If you're waiting for authority to lead, you are wasting a lot of valuable time. Influence is actually what makes things happen. And in learning and development, it is absolutely crucial because we are often not in charge of the final decision or the budget or the people. We often don't have the final say in who gets promoted or who goes on that leadership course. We navigate very complex environments where we need to convince people to spend money, to spend time, to invest in learning, to take their development seriously, and to change so that they are successful in this new world. And this is why influence is our most powerful tool. If you can get stakeholders, managers, and executives to trust your expertise, value what you bring, and act on your recommendations, you do not need a title. You just need to keep building your credibility, communication, and connection. And here's where AI makes this so urgent, because if AI can already create training programs, personalize learning plans, and track employee development better than we can, then learning and development is no longer about creating content. It is about driving the strategy around capability building. And that requires influence. Let's move into part 2, the psychology of influence. How do we get people to listen? And here is what is fascinating. People do not follow authority. They follow trust, credibility, and confidence. So if you want to lead without authority, we have to understand the psychology around why people follow you. And that is exactly what we're going to dive into right now. Influence starts with trust. So if people don't trust you, they're not going to follow you. End of story. And so trust is built over time with consistency and credibility. So you do not get trust just by showing up. You build trust by showing up consistently and consistently showing that you understand what the business needs and that you care about solving the problem and that you follow through. So ask yourself, when you are interacting with stakeholders, are you showing them that you understand them? Are you speaking their language? Are you asking about their pain points and their challenges? Are you trying to dig deeper into their dreams and aspirations? Or are you just trying to push learning on them? And here's a practical tip that I will be working on forever. But when you're in these interactions, you must listen more than you talk, and you must ask questions more than you talk. So the next time you're in a business meeting with a stakeholder, instead of jumping to a training solution, why don't you just take a step back and ask them, what are the challenges you're facing right now in your team? And then let them talk and show them that you actually care. So do not jump to solution mode just yet. But trust alone isn't enough. So I like to think of it as trust gets you in the door, but credibility keeps you in the room. And so we're going to talk about how to build credibility next. So if we think about it, trust is emotional and credibility is practical. It's about showing that you know what you're talking about and delivering really good results. And here's my practical tip with you. Back yourself up with data. So when you have a recommendation, bring in the data that led you to that recommendation. So instead of saying something like, I recommend we should do leadership training, instead say, companies that invest in leadership training see a 20% increase in retention rates. For this company, that would mean an X dollar amount saved. Do you see the difference? One sounds like a guess, and the other one is based on a business case. And credibility is not built in a day. It is built over time. And I have shared this story before, but in an internal interview, my manager was actually interviewing me, and he asked me at the time, so Candace, how do you build credibility? And I answered with, because I do. I hadn't thought about the process or the steps. And so after that interview, because that was literally my answer, I was like, I don't know, I just do, I don't know. I actually went and developed a 5-step process to build credibility, and I want to share that with you now. There is also a printable version of these 5 steps, so it'll be super useful for you. So grab the link in the description. So step 1 is to gather expectations and needs. Get your finger on the pulse. So right away, you meet with whatever stakeholders that you can, line managers, employees, whoever you will be supporting. But you have to really get a grasp of what their day looks like, what their pain points look like, and where they want to go. Like, what are their dreams? What's the promotion that they want? You need to get into the detail of what their world looks like. And you can do this by meeting with key stakeholders, in attending team meetings, going for observations, spending time with the people doing the work, taking notes, whatever that looks like. Just spend time and get accustomed to what their experience is. Step 2, and I call this out deliberately, is to ensure understanding. So very often, L&D people, they are not the experts in whatever they're supporting, right? So that is my experience. I've always been the L&D expert, but I've never been the subject matter expert. And this kind of led to me misunderstanding quite a few things. So I would jump to an assumption. Oh, I got it. I totally understand. But in fact, I didn't understand. And so this step is so important, especially when you are not the expert in the training you're going to create. So ask questions. And we're actually in such a privileged position because we're not expected to know. We're not expected to be the subject matter expert. So we can really ask the so-called dumb questions that other people won't ask and get actually really good information from people. So again, this can be done by meeting with stakeholders and then just sense checking your information and understanding with someone you trust. So perhaps you go back to that stakeholder if you have a good relationship with them, or maybe it's your manager or another peer and you can say, does this make sense, my understanding? So just sense check it with someone you trust. And if you get this step right, you will immediately stand out as someone who is aligned and proactive. Step 3 is to identify and action quick wins. This is especially important if you're new in the role, new in the company, whatever the case is, or new even to supporting that team or function. So once you gather all the information, right, you've met with the stakeholders, you've made sure you understand, identify a few things that you can action straight away to start proving your value, your understanding, your capability, because then you're making meaningful contributions right away. And you can even ask your stakeholder, you can ask them straight out, like, if I were to develop something small in the next 30 days that would really help you, what would it be? And maybe they have a great idea, and then you can just go do that. Yes. Step 4 is to deliver quality, right? So quick wins is a way to like get your foot in the door, to start contributing, but quality is what's going to keep you there. Once you show you can execute fast, now it's your time to over deliver. And here's my tips. Never compromise on quality, because your reputation will be built on the execution and consistency over time. And then where possible, leverage your strengths. So double down on what makes you unique and stand out, and then deliver on those. And always under promise and over deliver. So you can say something like, I'll deliver that training in 1 month from now, and then you actually deliver it 3 weeks in the best quality possible, and they are just blown away. And remember, stakeholders will remember how you made them feel. So make it super easy to work with you, and that they can build that trust right away. And then the final step, which we must never forget, is ask for critical feedback and ways to improve. The highest performing professionals constantly seek critical feedback. And this is not just the good stuff, but this is the hard truths that help them continuously improve. So regularly ask your stakeholders, what's working well? What could be done better? Conduct a self-review. Ask yourself what you wish you had done differently, and then adapt and evolve, because great leaders will change their approach when it's necessary. So the people that ask for feedback are the ones that get better. The ones that get better are the ones that build the credibility. And if you do want to go deeper on this credibility process or 5-step framework that I developed, there is a quick YouTube video that I created, which you could touch somewhere on the screen and jump into that. But make sure you watch this video to the end, otherwise you're going to miss all the good stuff. Okay, so we've established why influence is key and how to build credibility. But how do we integrate this into your everyday work? Because if you don't have formal authority, how do you get people to buy in, take action, and listen to you? So let's dive into the 3 practical ways you can start leading, no title required. Number 1 is a biggie. Make conversations a business conversation and not a learning conversation. We need to stop talking about learning like it's something separate to the business. Because as soon as you frame something like an L&D initiative instead of a solution to a business problem, you've lost half the audience. Think about it. So if a sales team lead hears, oh, we've got some training on communication, they've checked out. They don't need more training on communication. But if they hear something like, this will help your team close deals faster with the potential of a 15% revenue increase, boom, you've got their attention. What's the difference? Framing. So here is my tip for you. Before every single conversation you have, ask yourself, how is this going to support the business? Or how does this tie into a business priority? And if you cannot see the relevance, your stakeholders won't either. So instead of saying something like, we're rolling out this new leadership development program, say something instead like, developing these leaders will reduce turnover, increase performance, and support the company's growth goals. So why does this work? It is because leaders are going to make decisions based on impact and not effort. No one wants to do more. No one wants to work harder. And learning is actually an effort word. But just because something is critical to L&D, it doesn't mean that it's going to be important to the business or be seen as important to the business. So if you want that seat at the table, you're going to have to show that L&D is not just a support function, but it is a business driver. And here's the tough part. You probably can't do this alone. Influence is a lot stronger if you have allies. And that is what is next. Action 2 is to find your business allies. You do not have to be the loudest person in the room to have influence. In fact, the best way to get influence is to have someone else advocate for you. So think about who in your organization already values people development. Who are the leaders that understand the connection between skills and business success? Those are the people that will amplify your message. And here is what happens if you don't have allies. Your initiatives will not get prioritized. And again, it's not because people don't care or because learning is not valuable. It's because people in the organization are going to focus on what their boss is focusing on. So if your work is not directly tied to the leader's priorities, it will always come in second place. So now, go and make a list of the 5 most top influential people in the business. And this is particularly around workforce strategy. Set up meetings with them, not to pitch learning, to understand their challenges. Ask them, what is the biggest challenge when it comes to performance of your team? And then find ways to tie learning to their success. Because if you're seen as that problem solver, they are going to start advocating for you. And they are going to advocate for you in rooms that you are not in. And you also have to know that relationships are a source of authority. When people know, like, and trust you, they are more likely to buy into your ideas and initiatives. This is where emotional intelligence comes into play. You got to understand their emotions, what drives them, and make real human connections. And you have to play the long game when it comes to building relationships. Here are some ways that you can strengthen relationships for influence. The first one is to find common ground. Don't make every conversation about work. Find out what interests them. What does their family look like? What do they do on the weekends? There is a myriad of ways that you can find connections beyond the workplace. And then it is to offer value first. So instead of asking them to support you, ask them how you can support them. Then it is to stay consistent. Show up in conversations. Provide insights. And be that person that always follows through. Influence isn't just about who you know. It is about how you show up. And nothing earns credibility faster than solving a problem before it becomes a crisis. And that is exactly the third point that we're going to cover now. Be the person who solves problems before they become a problem. So if you want to be taken seriously, be that person. Because in any business, the person who brings solutions, not just ideas, are the ones who gain influence. And here is the mistake that most learning and development people make. We wait for stakeholders to come to us with a training request instead of proactively identifying problems before they become business risks. So by the time we're involved, it's often too late to make a real impact. And that's where we get stuck in reactive mode. So here is my tip for you. Do not wait for permission. Analyze the data yourself. Look at turnover rates, performance metrics, engagement scores. Where are the gaps? So if one department is really struggling with retention, don't wait for HR to ask for training. Go to them and say, hey, I've been looking at the data and I've recognized that the turnover is particularly high in this department. Can we discuss some potential solutions? Now you're leading without any formal authority. And so if this sounds familiar, yes, it's the 3-step problem-solving approach. 1 is to observe. What patterns do you see in business performance data? Where are the teams struggling? And then step 2 is to diagnose. What is the root cause? Is it a leadership issue, a skills gap, a process problem? And then step 3 is to propose a solution. What interventions could solve this problem? And remember, training is not always the solution. And we are there to enable people, not train them. So come up with any solution that enables the people. Here's why this works. Because it is the fastest way to prove your credibility. Leaders notice when someone is proactively solving problems. When you're consistently providing value, leaders are going to proactively seek you out for your ideas. Guess what? You then move from support to strategic partner. Okay, we've spoken about why influence matters, how to build credibility, and some practical strategies that you can adopt to implement this in your day-to-day. So let's wrap this up with part 4, which is your action plan. Step 1 is to shift your mindset from order taker to business critical partner. This is not about what you do, but this is about how you see yourself. Because if you see yourself as just L&D or just training, the business is going to see you that way too. You are here to drive performance, impact, and results, not check boxes. Here is a mindset shift exercise for you. Every time someone asks you for training, stop. Instead of saying yes immediately, ask them, what is the actual problem we're solving here? And then constantly remind yourself that you are a business leader. Your work impacts retention, revenue, innovation. Like, your work matters. Own that. And then adopt a performance consulting approach. Because again, your job isn't about providing training, it's to solve business problems through development. Now that we've looked at your mindset, that is step 1. Step 2 is to speak the language of the business. Because here's the thing, if you want to be taken seriously, you have to speak the same language as the business leaders. And that means moving way beyond learning metrics like show up rates or how many people you trained, and instead talking about retention, productivity, revenue, all of that kind of stuff. So here's how you can start speaking the business language today. Before your next meeting, do some research. What are the big business challenges? And then prepare your story around those. And then you can use data-driven storytelling. So instead of saying this training will improve leadership skills, We say strong leadership reduces turnover by 30%. For us, that means a saving of 1.3 million this year by improving our retention rate. Voila. And connect learning to financial outcomes. If you can show how learning saves money or increases productivity, leaders listen. Okay, now you have the right mindset, you're speaking the language of the business, but words alone won't influence. You need the right people backing you. And that brings us to step 3. Build your network. Because you don't have to do this alone. The most influential people aren't the ones with the best words, but they are the ones with people around them, saying the same messages and supporting them. Okay, and here's a quick recap of how you build those allies. Number 1 is you've already written down the 5 most influential people in your organization. So pick 3 of them and meet with them as soon as you can. Tell them what you're working on, get their insights, and make sure you are on the right track. And then set up regular check-ins with people. So instead of waiting for people to come to you, set up monthly or bi-monthly meetings with departments or teams that you support, just so that you can check in and stay with your finger on the pulse. And then turn these people into champions. Help them solve a problem, because then I promise you, they are going to advocate for you. Okay, and then step 4 in your action plan, just to recap, is to solve a problem before it becomes a problem. And here are the steps. So number 1 is look for the data. What's happening with turnover, productivity, engagement? Where are the pain points? And then you anticipate skills gaps. So is the company expanding? Are they going through a transformation? And what skills do they need next? You then proactively present the solution. Again, instead of waiting for leaders to come to you, you are going to them to say, I've analyzed the data, I see this gap, and I recommend this solution. Okay, it is time to wrap this all up with one of the most important things, which is consistency. And consistency is all about showing up every single day. Influence is not one big moment. It is built in the micro moments, day in, day out, conversation to conversation. It's about proving over and over again that you are someone worth listening to. So how to make influence a daily habit? Every day, ask yourself, what is one thing that I can do to strategically improve my position? It could be a conversation, a piece of analysis, or even just a proactive suggestion. And then follow up relentlessly. If you suggest something, don't just let it die. Follow up, refine it, ask for feedback, and push for action. And then track your wins. This is so important. Keep a record of how your work impacts the business so that you can reference it in future conversations. Once you start doing this, it'll become seamless and just naturally flow in your conversations. It's going to take some time to build that muscle memory, but I promise you it is worth it. So start collecting that, get a email inbox or subfolder or however you like to capture your information, but do that, because if you don't show your value, no one's going to see it. It is now time to summarize and wrap this beast up so that you can leave with leadership skills to lead like you have never led before. So remember, this is not about waiting for permission. This is about stepping up. shifting the way you engage with your stakeholders and proving your impact in every conversation and every interaction. So here is what I want you to take away from this episode. Leadership is not a title, it's a set of behaviors. You build influence by showing up as a problem solver, a business partner, and someone who adds value way beyond training programs. Trust, credibility, and relationships are your currency. Influence is absolutely not about how loud you are. It is about how much people trust you to deliver meaningful results. Small actions, persistently taken, will change how you are perceived. Start speaking the language of the business, proactively solving problems, and build allies that can advocate for L&D at the highest levels. So before you leave me, I want you to pick out one action. I know I gave you an action plan, but just pick one thing that you can do today, because influence isn't built through thinking about it. It is built through taking action. And remember, if you want to go deeper into building credibility, I have that quick little YouTube video that walks you through my 5-step framework. Or you can just grab the printable version in the description. And speaking of next steps, we're not done yet. Next week, we're taking this even further and digging into how to drive business results through L&D. Because influence is great, but it is impact that will make you indispensable. So if you are ready to not just get buy-in, but start shaping the future of your business through the workforce, then this episode will be for you.